Hello, Canada. Welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, Elias Tagai. Well, we got lots to cover on this episode. We're going to start talking about Ukraine and how funding was just pulled. Talk a little bit about the tariffs and retaliation. We're going to talk also about earthquakes. There were two more just south of the border in BC. A few other things, and then my favorite, last but not least, Panthers in Ontario. There's always something going on in Canada. And I'm going to make a correction before we get started. I had said on a previous episode that Trump's approval rating was at 79%. They did an averaging of the polls. He's actually at 76%, which is still astronomical considering what you're hearing on the news, isn't it? Yes. Now, on to Trump and Ukraine.
So we want to dive into the fallout that continues due to the very contentious, fraught meeting between Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky and President Trump in the Oval Office on Friday. So much so that Zelensky traveling to European capitals, including London, meeting with some of these European leaders to talk about the path forward. This coming after the news we brought you just tonight that the Trump administration is planning to pause all U.S. military aid to Ukraine here. In the meantime, Fox's Kevin Corke has more on this from Washington. Let's listen.
A senior White House official tells Fox News the U.S. will pause all military aid to Ukraine until the Ukrainians show a stronger commitment to working out a peace deal. This as European leaders try to carve out their own path toward a ceasefire, with Britain and France leading the charge. The UK's Prime Minister says he's open to sending troops to Ukraine to help keep the peace.
Britain will play a leading role, with, if necessary, and together with others, boots on the ground and planes in the air.
Both countries acknowledge the U.S. would likely still be needed as a part of a peacekeeping effort to ensure that a truce holds. That would, however, require a reset of U.S.-Ukraine relations after Friday's disastrous Oval Office meeting. The White House says it expects an apology from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who has tried to keep open the door to repairing the relationship.
He's in a very difficult position. The war is not going well for Ukraine.
This weekend, Zelensky said he thinks a peace deal is still a long way away. That comment not sitting well with President Trump.
He better not be right about that. And if somebody doesn't want to make a deal, I think that person won't be around very long.
Amid the uncertainty, European leaders are looking to ramp up their own defense spending. In fact, the EU is set to hold an emergency summit on that very topic this coming Thursday.
Well, there you have it. And there's a lot more to that than even he's saying. You got to remember, they're finding mass amounts of corruption. There's been billions of dollars that have laundered through Ukraine, through U.S. aid and other organizations. Doge is slowly exposing all of it. I will be sure to make sure I inform you as these stories break, which we have one later on in this episode we're going to get to. Now let's talk about the tariffs. Economists have been warning the government, other politicians, about retaliation because our economy is in such disrepair. Now, they started warning them right when Trump first announced he was going to put tariffs out. Did our politicians listen? No, they did not. In fact, they did the worst possible thing, and they started literally making it worse by avoiding the truth, not even going down and talking, and I'm talking about our prime minister, to Trump, and even the rest of the federal government hasn't, well, Parliament's closed, so there's nothing they can do. We're literally held hostage by the NDP Liberals right now. And the master of this, who could fix all of this, is our Supreme Court. And they have just proven to Canada how utterly useless they are. They should have already ruled on this prorogation and put Canadians' minds at ease. One decision or the other, they should have said something. Personally, I favored the fact that he used it inappropriately. Period. But that's my opinion. Let me know how you think in the comments. Now, on to this tariffs. If you take a look at this graph, this was just put out here yesterday. The solid lines are if tariffs just go from the States, this is what's going to happen to our GDP. We're the purple, Mexico's the green. We're in really bad economic shape. Our entire economy has been destroyed by the Green Initiative, which is failing daily. Banks and businesses are dropping this Green Initiative like a hot potato. Do you see how fast our purple line drops? And even though we do come up, we level out with a very mild incline. It's going to take us a long time, a very long time, to slowly come back up again. Because and this is taking into account that we're fixing our own damn system while we're suffering these tariffs. The green is Mexico. Look at how, even though they drop lower than we do in their GDP, look at how the incline is steeper because their economy isn't in as bad shape as ours. Ours is a dumpster fire. The dotted lines are what happen if we retaliate. Now, any politician that's telling you that it's going to hurt the states more than us is either stupid or is lying. Either way, shouldn't be in their seats. The fact that Dougie Ford got elected is beyond me. This doesn't take into account extreme retaliation. And we know about Trump. He don't mess around. If Dougie decides to cut the power off like an idiot, you can expect to see this GDP of ours drop lower than Mexico's and possibly drop right off of this chart. And as probably don't know if you don't watch my show, but if you do watch my show, you already do know our GDP is the lowest in the G7 and amongst the lowest in all civilized countries, which is embarrassing considering how high it was 9 years ago. So if you've been told and you know people that are out there chanting cut off the power, and make sure you let them know this graph. And now I'm going to go on to something that's kind of privy to this. It's part and parcel. And this could have a major effect on. Take a listen.
Even though interest rates are going down, a new report shows many people are drowning in debt. Equifax Canada reports that mortgage delinquencies nearly doubled in Ontario from 2023 to 2024. Rates are also up in BC and Quebec. The trend signals the potential not only for a wave of defaults, but an indicator of deeper financial strain. Joining me with more on this is Rebecca Oakes. She's the Vice President of Advanced Analytics at Equifax Canada. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Let's talk about the delinquency rate in Ontario. It is now at 0.22%. I'm going to say that again, 0.22%. It's a small number overall, but with 1.2 million mortgages set to renew this year across the country, how concerning is this trend?
I mean, it really is a concern for us. When you talk about mortgage mispayments, individuals will try their hardest to keep making the payments on their home. And so as we start to see mispayments increasing, we also see mispayments on other types of credits. So things like credit cards and auto loans. And that's really why we are so concerned, because those numbers are increasing. And unfortunately, so far, the reduction in interest rates isn't yet helping.
This year, as I mentioned, 1.2 million mortgages are coming up for renewal. Most of those were secured when the Bank of Canada's key interest rate was at or below 1%. How much worse could this get?
I mean, we certainly expect to see these numbers continuing to rise. I mean, as you just mentioned, the latest round of renewals we're going to see this year, they are starting from super low rates on their mortgage. So even though those Bank of Canada rates have come down, there's still a fairly significant delta or kind of gap. So when those mortgages come up for renewal, we do expect to see many individuals seeing payments rising. And in areas like Ontario and British Columbia, the mortgage amounts are so much higher because property prices are higher as well, and therefore they are going to see the biggest impact to their monthly payments.
Now, you heard that, right? Delinquency rates. Ontario, 90%. I have no idea how Dougie got elected. It's beyond me. The carnage. But it is what it is. So if you're one of these people who have to renew their mortgages and are part of the 70% of Canadians that are $250 from insolvency, these tariffs are really going to affect you. Moving on to earthquakes in BC, and not necessarily in BC, just across the American border, but close enough to the Cascadia that they should matter.
We're getting reports of the quake being felt everywhere from the San Juan Islands all the way to King County. There are so far no significant reports of damage. However, the quake certainly did get a lot of people's attention.
1068. Thank you. Thanks for coming by.
The day started very early for the crew at Dad's Diner in Anacortes. Jamie Miller was getting ready for work when it hit.
My dog started freaking out, being a little spaz, and so then I started to realize that everything in my house was shaking. Yeah.
Jamie immediately ran for the cover of a door jamb, just like she learned in school years ago.
It was like muscle memory, getting under a desk or a door jamb.
My dog alerted me. I thought there was somebody at the front door, and then I thought that person was flying a jet airplane into our house.
Damage from the quake was minimal, but it was strong enough to move Davina Liberty's Orcas Island barn a few inches off its foundation. Orcas was the epicenter for the quake. A smaller aftershock of 1.3 hit a few minutes later closer to Anacortes, sparking fears of a potential tsunami, but one never developed.
This is the epicenter right here where the star is.
Harold Tobin is Washington State's seismologist and director of the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network. The network is continuously monitoring earthquake activity. Tobin says today's earthquake and other recent activity are nothing to be alarmed about.
Right now, what we're seeing is certainly more activity than is just typical in a week, but not anything that is really unusual or out of our past experience of earthquakes in our region.
But Tobin says in the Northwest, we must never get complacent.
They don't happen very often, thankfully, the damaging ones, but when they come really when you least expect it, without warning.
We're told people in the San Juans can expect aftershocks for the next several weeks. Emergency responders tell us this is a great time to make sure you have a disaster plan for your family and home.
And as I keep telling everybody, check into your emergency preparedness system. There's websites. You can even make a call. Be prepared. And the best part about it is if you're aware of it and it's within your discussion, it spreads to friends and family, and then they become aware. You may not just save one life, you may save hundreds. And they'll tell you everything. They'll tell you the tide water. They'll tell you if there is a tsunami, the heights that's maximum height that it could be at, which of course is all estimated guesses. But still, these are things you need to know, especially if you're living in zones like BC, where at any minute, you guys could suffer a serious quake. If you haven't watched any of my episodes, scroll back and check out. I did a pretty good in-depth video cast on the BC earthquakes, in case you want to know. Now, Mark Carney has been really peeing a lot of people off, especially with his lies. And the last one with Paul Martin was a really obvious debunker, that he wasn't even around when that happened. But taking credit for the 2008-9, that's really ticked off some people. And it's about time that somebody high up started speaking out, and now the rest of the people around him are as well. But let's take it from the top dog at the time, Harper.
Stephen Harper has had enough of Mark Carney claiming he's responsible for things he had nothing to do with. Hi, I'm Brian Lilly, political columnist for the Toronto Sun. Stephen Harper has written a scathing letter denouncing Mark Carney for trying to take credit for things done by a man who's now dead, the late Jim Flaherty, Stephen Harper's longest-serving finance minister, the man who really shepherded Canada through the 2008-2009 financial crisis, and a man whose work Carney has been trying to take credit for as he seeks to become Liberal leader and Prime Minister of Canada. This is not the first time that Carney's tried to take credit for things he didn't do. During the Liberal leadership debate, of course, he claimed to have helped Paul Martin balance the budget in the Chrétien Liberal government.
Well, it was my privilege to work with Paul Martin when he balanced the books and kept the books balanced. And one of the lessons of that is the need for government to continue to focus on how effectively it is spending precious taxpayers' dollars.
And of course, we know from his own resume that, well, Carney wasn't even in the country. He wasn't working for the federal government. In fact, he didn't join the finance department until 2004 when Paul Martin was already prime minister. It took his office 2 days to come up with the statement saying that, well, he enjoyed working with Paul Martin to keep budgets balanced. It was a ridiculous claim for Carney to have made. It's why there are all these memes going around the internet claiming that, well, Carney was the fifth Beatle, he was in the Supremes, that he helped Karl Marx write Das Kapital, that, job after job that Carney never did, including being the first Canadian astronaut in space. All of these things, ridiculous, just like Carney's claim. The only thing he doesn't seem to want to take credit for is moving the headquarters of Brookfield Asset Management from Toronto to New York. On that front, he tried to claim he had nothing to do with it, even though he was chairman of the board when the board voted unanimously to make the move. And as chairman of the board, he wrote a letter encouraging all shareholders to back the board's move. Now he wants to say, well, that wasn't really him. They made the decision after he left. Mm-hmm.
Lies after lies after lies. He's actually a politician at heart. He just hasn't been trained on how to be deceitful silently. I'm glad he's getting busted. And I hope you become a fan of my channel. And if you go back in some of my episodes, I've broken some pretty big bombshell news stories myself. Don't mean to brag, but I'm pointing out that if you go back and check out a couple of the episodes that I have done on Brookfield, I'm sure they will shake you on how evil this corporation is, especially run under him. Now we're going to get to Doge. Doge just discovered another one. And, well, I'll just let it speak for itself.
Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or Doge, has targeted a nonprofit based here in San Antonio, saying its contract for $215 million a year is canceled. News 4 San Antonio I-Team Waste Watch reporter Jay Avila has this story live from the Content Center.
Mandy, in a post on X, Doge said the Department of Health and Human Services had terminated a contract paying Family Endeavors $18 million a month to operate an empty facility in West Texas. The organization is also known as Endeavors, and you may have seen its administrative headquarters and wellness center on Dezavala Road, where it has a cluster of buildings and storefronts. Doge focused on an overflow housing facility for migrant families Endeavors operates in Pecos, Texas, which Doge says has been sitting empty, while Endeavors has been receiving the $18 million per month. Homeland Security reposted Doge's X post, tagging U.S. Attorney Ed Martin with the words, "Please investigate," to which Martin responded, "Duly noted, we are on it." I went to Endeavor's San Antonio headquarters today to get a comment from the organization. They responded late this afternoon by email. Endeavors was responsible for maintaining operational readiness at the Pecos shelter, ensuring the ability to scale from cold status, operationally ready but not actively serving children, to full use of 3,000 beds as needed. Decisions regarding facility use and migrant sheltering locations were made by the federal government. government, not endeavors. Any claims of corruption or mismanagement are baseless. Doge also claims Endeavors received its HHS contract in 2021 after a former ICE employee and Biden transition team member joined the nonprofit. Endeavor's government disclosure forms show its revenues shot up in 2021 from $50 million to $658 million, reaching a peak of $1.1 billion in 2022. For the News 4 I-Team.
That is a lot of money. Like I said, Doge is doing wonders down in the States. So now on to my favorite story of tonight's broadcast. The Black Cats of Ontario. Are they Jags? Are they Panthers? Let's find out.
For the past 3 decades, people of Ontario have been having sightings and close encounters with what they describe as a large black cat, resembling that of a cougar, or rather a black panther. What is really odd, though, about these sightings is that a lot of them are confirmed by the government to be credible. And we even have a confirmed photograph of a melanistic jaguar, which was taken outside of Guelph, Ontario in 2010. Come with me now as I examine the evidence of cougar sightings and jaguar sightings in southern Ontario. From my own research, I have personally received over 30 separate sightings of large black cats in Ontario. Additionally, I have also been able to find over a dozen newspaper headlines of people spotting a large black cat. Since I always map out every sighting I receive, one thing became obvious. Some of these sightings all happen in the same general area, almost creating like a hotspot, as it were. Although the amount of sightings I currently have at this point in time is limited, let's go over what I have learned so far in the past 3 weeks. Starting with hotspot number 1, we have southwest of London. There's some sightings around Kamoka, around the reservation, and Port Stanley actually. Hotspot number 2 would actually be Ohsweken. But what's very interesting about these 2 sightings is they're practically right next to each other. The first sighting actually shut down a school in 2022. I shouldn't say shut down though, they closed a recess, but they report seeing a big black cat with a long tail. And for the second sighting, I was sent this video by someone on Facebook, and this video was taken literally just down half a block from the last sighting. I'll leave it up to you what you think it is in the video, whether you think it's a jaguar, perhaps a stray dog, a pig, or maybe a juvenile bear.
I will make sure to leave, well, not only the link for this episode, but I'm going to leave the link for the previous episode. Check this guy out. It's called Ontario's Mysterious Black Bear Panther Sightings Explained. Fishing Urban Ontario is the name. It's quite fascinating, and the way he's been documenting it, he's been doing an extraordinary job. So kudos to you, buddy. Keep up the good work. If I have any viewers that are in that Southern Ontario area, I'd like to know your comments. If you have any pictures or videos, share them. Make sure you get a hold of this guy, and make sure that you check the links below and watch the videos. They're quite fascinating. And like I said, he does a really, really good job on breaking it all down. He's been tracking and marking every sighting. It's pretty wild. Yeah, like I said, mind-boggling. There's always something going on in Canada. That is for sure. Well, you guys, I'm going to call that an episode. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, and punch that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Until next time, you've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagai.